Before the most famous Soviet tanks ever appeared on the battlefield, the Soviet Union had already explored nearly every possible form of military vehicle. Years before the war reached its full intensity, Soviet engineers were experimenting with speed, mobility, armor protection, firepower, and mass production, often all at once. From tiny tankettes and amphibious scout vehicles to fast cavalry tanks, heavy breakthrough machines, and massive self-propelled artillery, Soviet engineers were pushing the boundaries of innovation. The Red Army relied on a wide and interconnected system of vehicles rather than a single dominant design. Each machine was built for a specific role, shaped by geography, climate, and the demands of industrial warfare on the Eastern Front. This video presents every major Soviet military vehicle used during World War II, grouped by category and explained briefly, one by one. Together, these vehicles reveal how Soviet industry transformed experimentation into scale, creating a marvelous array of machines that left a lasting legacy, and scale into a system capable of sustaining total war. We begin with light tanks and early tankettes, which form the foundation of Soviet armor development before and during the early years of the war. These vehicles emphasized mobility, simplicity, and numbers, reflecting early Soviet armored doctrine. T-27, a very small tankette derived from foreign concepts. It carried light armament and minimal armor, offering basic protection only against small arms fire. Used mainly for training, internal security duties, and early reconnaissance missions. By the time full-scale war began, it was already obsolete for frontline combat. T-37A, the first mass-produced Soviet amphibious tank, designed to cross rivers and operate ahead of main forces without engineering support. Its ability to swim gave it flexibility in reconnaissance roles. However, extremely thin armor made it highly vulnerable once enemy fire intensified. An improved amphibious design developed from the T-37A featured better balance and improved handling in water. Mechanical reliability was slightly improved. Combat performance remained limited due to weak protection and light armament. T-40, a more modern light tank introduced just before the outbreak of the war, combined amphibious capability with improved mobility and a more compact design, better suited for reconnaissance and screening tasks than direct combat, represented the final evolution of Soviet amphibious light tanks. T-40S, a land-based variant of the T-40. Removal of flotation equipment reduced weight and simplified production. Improved speed and handling on solid ground. Still lightly armored and restricted to secondary battlefield roles. T-26, the most widely used Soviet light tank of the early war period. Simple, reliable, and produced in very large numbers across multiple factories. Served as the backbone of Soviet armored units in the late 1930s and early 1941. Suffered severe losses during the German invasion due to outdated armor and tactics. Fast tanks reflected Soviet pre-war doctrine that emphasized speed, maneuver, and deep operations behind enemy lines. These vehicles were designed to move rapidly across large distances, exploit breakthroughs, and disrupt enemy formations before heavier forces arrived. BT-2, the first of the high-speed BT tank series, capable of operating on wheels or tracks, allowing rapid road movement. Designed for speed and operational reach rather than armor protection. Mechanical reliability was limited, but it introduced key concepts for later designs. BT-5, an improved version of the early BT design, equipped with a more powerful 45mm gun. Firepower was significantly increased compared to earlier models. Armor protection remained thin, prioritizing mobility over survivability. BT-7, the final major development of the BT fast tank line, featured improved construction techniques and a more reliable engine, combined high speed with better overall durability. Among the fastest operational tanks of its era. BT-7M, a modernized BT variant representing a key technological step forward, introduced a diesel engine that would later be used in the T-34. improved fuel efficiency and reduced fire risk, marked the transition from pre-war concepts to wartime tank design philosophy. BT-7A, an artillery support adaptation of the standard BT-7, mounted a short-barreled 76mm gun optimized for high explosive shells, used to support infantry and suppress enemy positions. Limited production reflected its specialized battlefield role. As wartime losses increased and industrial pressure intensified, the Soviet Union introduced a new generation of light tanks focused on speed of production and battlefield necessity rather than perfection. These vehicles were designed to fill gaps quickly, support infantry, and maintain mobility during the most critical phases of the war. T-60, a simplified emergency light tank developed in 1941, built quickly using minimal materials and simplified construction methods, lightly armed and lightly armored, used mainly for reconnaissance, convoy protection, and limited combat roles. T-70, an improved successor to the T-60, featured better armor protection and a two-man crew. Improved firepower increased battlefield usefulness, still struggled against heavier enemy tanks and anti-tank guns. T-70M, a refined version of the T-70, introduced wider tracks to improve ground pressure and traction. An improved suspension system enhanced mechanical reliability, considered one of the more effective Soviet light tank designs of the war. T-80, the final Soviet light tank design to enter production, technically advanced for its class, featuring a three-man turret, designed to improve crew efficiency and command capability. Production ended as Soviet doctrine shifted decisively toward medium tanks. T-50, a well-protected light infantry tank developed early in the war. Excellent armor design and mobility for its size, intended to replace older light tanks in frontline units, too complex and expensive for mass production under wartime conditions. Medium tanks formed the backbone of Soviet armored warfare throughout World War II. They represented the balance between mobility, firepower, protection, and mass production, allowing the Red Army to sustain long campaigns across vast distances. T-18, the first indigenous Soviet tank design, influenced heavily by earlier foreign models, simple and lightly armored by wartime standards, used mainly for training and secondary duties during the conflict. An interwar medium tank featuring multiple turrets, designed to engage several targets simultaneously. Impressive in size and appearance, but lightly armored. Vulnerable to modern anti-tank weapons during the early stages of the war. T-34 Model 1941, a revolutionary tank design that redefined armored warfare. Sloped armor increased protection without excessive weight. Wide tracks improved mobility in mud, snow, and rough terrain. Rapidly became the core of Soviet armored forces. T-34 Model 1942 and Model 1943. Incremental improvements focused on reliability and simplified production. Armor layout and internal components were refined. Manufacturing processes were streamlined to increase output. Maintained strong battlefield effectiveness despite wartime constraints. T-34-57, a specialized tank destroyer variant of the T-34, equipped with a high-velocity 57mm gun, optimized for engaging enemy armor at longer ranges, produced in limited numbers due to shifting battlefield priorities. T-34-85, the final and most capable wartime version of the T-34, introduced a larger three-man turret for improved crew efficiency, mounted a powerful 85mm gun capable of engaging heavy tanks, restored Soviet armored superiority during the final years of the war. Heavy tanks were designed to break enemy defenses and lead frontal assaults against fortified positions. These vehicles emphasized armor protection and firepower over speed, serving as breakthrough weapons during major offensives. T-35, a massive multi-turreted heavy tank developed during the interwar period, designed to project power and intimidation rather than practical combat efficiency. Complex mechanical layout reduced reliability. Most vehicles were lost early in the war with limited battlefield impact, KV-1, a heavily armored breakthrough tank introduced at the start of the conflict. Its thick armor rendered it nearly immune to most early German anti-tank weapons, created significant tactical challenges for enemy forces in 1941. Mechanical strain and limited mobility remained persistent issues. KV-2, a specialized bunker-destroying variant of the KV series, mounted a massive 152mm howitzer in a tall turret, designed to destroy fortifications and hardened positions. Extremely powerful, but slow, cumbersome, and difficult to operate. KV-1S, a lighter and faster evolution of the KV-1. Reduced armor thickness, improved speed and mechanical reliability. Better suited for sustained operations and maneuver warfare. Represented an effort to balance protection and mobility. KV-85, a transitional heavy tank developed during the shift to newer designs, combined the KV chassis with a powerful 85mm gun. Improved firepower, addressed emerging enemy armor threats. Served as a bridge between the KV series and the IS series. IS-1, the first operational tank of the IS heavy tank family, featured improved armor layout with better sloping, mounted an effective 85mm gun, produced in limited numbers as development continued. IS-2, one of the most powerful tanks fielded during World War II, armed with a devastating 122mm gun capable of defeating heavy armor. Designed to destroy fortifications and enemy strongpoints, played a major role in late-war Soviet offensives. Self-propelled guns expanded Soviet firepower by combining heavy artillery with mobile armored platforms. They were designed to support infantry, counter enemy armor, and destroy fortifications, while remaining simpler and faster to produce than turreted tanks. ZIS-30, an emergency tank destroyer built in 1941 under extreme wartime pressure, mounted a 57mm anti-tank gun on a light artillery tractor chassis, delivered powerful firepower for its size, high recoil and poor stability, limited accuracy and crew safety. Su-76, a light self-propelled gun built on a simplified chassis, used primarily for infantry support, reconnaissance support, and anti-tank duties. Open fighting compartment, reduced protection but improved visibility. Produced in very large numbers and widely deployed across the front. Su-122, a self-propelled howitzer mounted on the T-34 chassis, armed with a 122mm gun firing high explosive shells. Designed for close fire support during assaults. Highly effective against bunkers and fortified positions. Su-85, a dedicated tank destroyer developed to counter heavier enemy armor, mounted an 85mm anti-tank gun in a fixed superstructure. Low profile, reduced visibility on the battlefield. Improved survivability compared to earlier designs. A late-war tank destroyer representing the peak of the Su series, equipped with a powerful 100mm gun, capable of defeating any German tank at combat ranges, remained effective well beyond the end of the war. Su-152, a heavy assault gun built to deliver overwhelming firepower, mounted a massive 152mm howitzer, used against heavy armor, fortifications, and strongpoints. Its destructive power earned a fearsome reputation. Su-122, an assault gun based on the IS heavy tank chassis, armed with a long-barreled 122mm cannon, designed for direct fire against fortified targets, played an important role in breakthrough operations. Su-152, the heaviest Soviet assault gun of World War II, mounted a 152mm gun capable of devastating enemy defenses, combined thick armor with immense firepower, widely used during major late-war offensives. Armored cars supported reconnaissance, security, and communication operations across the vast distances of the Eastern Front. They emphasized speed and mobility on roads, serving roles that tracked vehicles could not efficiently fulfill. BA-27, the first mass-produced Soviet armored car, developed during the interwar period and based on earlier tank components, lightly armored and lightly armed by wartime standards. Its value during World War II was limited and mostly restricted to secondary duties. FAI and BA-20 light armored reconnaissance vehicles built on civilian truck chassis. Designed for speed and reliability on paved and hard-packed roads. Used extensively for scouting, liaison, and courier missions. Armor protection was minimal, limiting survivability in combat zones. BA-6 and BA-10 heavy armored cars equipped with 45mm guns provided mobile fire support and reconnaissance and force capabilities, more heavily armed than earlier armored cars. Effective in the early stages of the war before suffering heavy losses in 1941. BA-64, a compact armored car introduced later in the war, built on a four-wheel drive chassis for improved off-road mobility. Simple, cheap, and agile in operation, widely used for reconnaissance and command support in the later years of the conflict. Support vehicles completed the system by enabling mobility, logistics, and sustained combat operations. Although less visible than tanks or guns, these vehicles ensured that firepower, ammunition, and personnel could reach the front lines under all conditions. T-20 Komsomolets, a light armored artillery tractor designed for frontline use. Used to tow light anti-tank and field guns. Also carried ammunition and gun crews under armor protection, essential to maintaining artillery support during fast-moving operations. STZ-5 and heavy tractors. Medium and heavy artillery tractors adapted from industrial and agricultural designs. Used to move large-caliber artillery across mud, snow, and broken terrain. Slow but rugged and reliable. Critical to Soviet firepower and sustained offensive capability. GAZ-AA, ZIS-5, and ZIS-6, standard Soviet military trucks produced in very large numbers, used to transport troops, axiom, ammunition, fuel, and supplies. Simple construction allowed rapid mass production and easy repair, forms the backbone of Soviet military logistics throughout the war. GAZ-64 and GAZ-67, light utility vehicles with improved off-road capability, used for reconnaissance, command transport, and liaison duties. Compact, mobile, and adaptable to multiple roles. Comparable in function to Allied light utility vehicles, Aerosand vehicles. Propeller-driven sleds designed for winter and snow-covered terrain. Used for rapid transport, reconnaissance, and communication. Capable of operating where wheeled and tracked vehicles could not. Ideal for frozen lakes, rivers, and deep snow environments. Together, these vehicles formed a complete and interconnected system of war. The Soviet Union relied not on a single machine, but on scale, adaptability, and industrial output. From the smallest scout vehicle to the heaviest assault gun, Soviet military vehicles carried the Red Army from survival to victory.